Welcome to Magnificat TV news program dedicated to providing church news. Today is Wednesday, April 19th, 2023, and these are our headlines. The brother of a teenager who disappeared 40 years ago made very serious insinuations against St. John Paul II on Italian television. In an address to the superiors of religious congregations in Italy, the Pope spoke of the Synod and reminded them that it is not a parliament. As every year, many adults were baptized at the Easter Vigil. In France, the increase has been significant. The majority of Latinos in the United States are still Catholics, but a lower percentage than 10 years ago. The Philippine bishops have ratified the prohibition for Catholics to belong to Freemasonry, although they will study particular cases. Pietro Orlandi, brother of the Italian teenager who disappeared 40 years ago, has launched slanderous insinuations against St. John Paul II.
An Italian television station has lent itself to broadcast very serious slanderous insinuations against St. John Paul II, launched in the form of insinuations by the brother of a teenager who disappeared 40 years ago. According to Pietro Orlandi, he was in possession of a recording of a repentant mafioso who assured him that his sister had been taken to St. John Paul II's room to be abused. To prevent what had happened from becoming known, the Secretary of State, Cardinal Casaroli, allegedly had the young woman murdered and ordered her body to disappear. Moreover, according to the criminal informant, St. John Paul II would regularly leave the Vatican at night to visit brothels where he would have relations with underage girls. Questioned by Vatican authorities for 8 hours, the complainant, Pietro Orlandi, refused to give the names of who his informant was. On the part of the Vatican, the most important reaction has been that of the Pope, who at the Angelus on Sunday recalled St. John Paul II and said that he was suffering from offensive and unfounded accusations. Cardinal Zuitwis, who was St. John Paul II's personal secretary, has spoken out. It goes without saying that these insinuations, which at first might be thought to come from the slippery circles of the Roman underworld, now given an appearance of pseudo-presentability, are in reality insulting accusations, false from beginning to end, unreal, laughable to the point of comedy, if they were not tragic, even criminal themselves. A gigantic crime is what has been done to Emanuela and her family, but criminal is to take advantage of it with uncontrollable insults, aimed at preemptively discrediting people and environments until there is evidence to the contrary, he said.
The Synod is not a parliament in which laws are changed according to the majorities, the Pope recalled in an address to the religious superiors of Italy.
The Pontiff reminded the 300 participants in the General Assembly of the Union of Major Superiors of Italy that women were the first witnesses of the resurrection. It is proper for women to be generous, the Pope said. Sometimes there are some neurotic women, but this happened a little bit everywhere, he added. The Bishop of Rome pointed out that the presence of Jesus, in fact, does not close us in on ourselves. It pushes us to encounter others and to the decision to work with others. For Francis, synodality is the master path to be followed by the Church. The synodal path is not having answered and making decisions. The synodal way is to work, to listen, to hear, to listen and to move forward. The synodal way is not a parliament. The synodal way is not a collection of opinions. The synodal journey is listening to life under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, who is the protagonist of the synod.
The Easter Vigil is the time when adult baptisms take place in many dioceses. In France, there has been a significant increase this year.
During this year's Easter Vigil, 5,463 adults across France received the sacraments of baptism, representing an increase of 28% compared to last year, according to the National Service of Catechesis and Catechumenate of the French Episcopal Conference. In 2022, the Church in France recorded 4,278 adult baptisms, and this year 33% of catechumens are between 18 and 25 years old. In addition, the number of catechumens has doubled in 17 French dioceses, and 3% of new converts are of Muslim origin. In the United States, numerous adult baptisms were also recorded during this Easter Vigil. In the Diocese of Fort Worth, Texas, there were 297 candidates and 452 catechumens, while in the Diocese of St. Petersburg, more than 350 people converted to the Catholic faith. In the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, 200 catechumens were baptized and 235 candidates signed up for the coming year. In the Diocese of Grand Rapids, 126 catechumens were baptized and 180 candidates. In the Archdiocese of Atlanta, the number of catechumens reached 1,831, while in the Archdiocese of Washington, 1,000 new converts joined the Catholic faith. In the Archdiocese of Baltimore, administered the sacraments of Christian initiation to 501 catechumens. And in the Archdiocese of New Orleans, 300 people, including 10 children studying at St. Joan of Arc School of La Place, Louisiana, embraced the Catholic faith.
First and second generation Latinos in the United States remain overwhelmingly Catholic, but that percentage has declined in recent years.
Although a new study found that Catholicism remains the dominant religion among the Hispanic or Hispanic Latino population in the United States, trends associated with the data show a population moving away from the faith and becoming increasingly religiously unaffiliated. The study, released by the Pew Research Center on April 13, found that 43% of Latino adults in the United States identify as Catholic, up from 67% in 2010. Meanwhile, the population of Latinos who are religiously unaffiliated now stands at 30%, up from 10% in 2010. The study found that more than half of Hispanic American immigrants in the United States identify as Catholic, 52%, and 21% have no religious affiliation. In contrast, US-born Latinos are less likely to be Catholics, 36%, and more likely to have no religious affiliation, 39%. The same trend holds when comparing Latinos in the United States who identify as English and Spanish dominant. More than half of Latinos who identify as Spanish dominant identify as Catholic, 56%. For English dominant speakers, the percentage of Catholics drops to 32%. U.S. Census data show that there are approximately 62.6 million Latinos in the United States, representing 18.9% of the population. Since the number of Latino immigrants coming to the United States has increased dramatically, there could now be more than one-third of the Latino population, first or second generation, in this country. The Latino population that the study found to be drifting furthest from the faith are young people, especially those born in the United States. Among U.S. Latinos ages 18 to 29, 79% were born in the United States. About half of Latinos in this age group now identify themselves as religiously unaffiliated.
The Church in the Philippines has ratified the prohibition to Catholics to belong to Freemasonry, although they will study the prohibition on a case-by-case basis.
Monsignor Rojas, President of the Episcopal Commission of the Doctrines of the Faith of the Episcopal Conference of the Philippines, has written a letter in which he recalled the incompatibility between Freemasonry and the Church, but shows his openness to examine the situation on a case-by-case basis. Monsignor Rojas' letters begin by pointing out that the Philippines hierarchy from 1954 to the present has always maintained and defended the official Catholic position on the inaccessibility of Freemasonry, giving its grave errors in both doctrines and practices. He adds, the missive recalls, moreover, that in the past, the Philippine bishops spoke on behalf of the Freemasons in their country to ask the Holy See to change its position on Freemasonry in the Asian country, since they did not consider themselves anti-Catholics, something that was twice rejected. However, the Philippines bishops seems willing not to proceed with a generalized condemnation of the Catholic who belongs to Masonic lodges, but they examine on a case-by-case basis.
Our editorial this week is dedicated on commenting on the slanderous accusations against St. John Paul II. In Spanish, there is an aphorism with which popular wisdom wants to express that when you say something bad about someone, especially if in addition you are not right, it is not true, the honor of that person is stained forever. Slander that something remains. No matter if the slander is credible or absurd, there is always a stain. This saying, unfortunately, applies not only when you want to harm a person, when you hate him, but also when you want to discredit the work of that person. That is exactly what they are doing right now with St. John Paul II. First, they started in his beloved Poland. A television station said that some evidence had been discovered in the archives of the former political police of the secret services of the communist regime. Some documents had been discovered which, according to them, made it clear that St. John Paul II, when he was an Archbishop of Krakow, somehow allowed 3 priests to commit acts of pederasty against minors, that he tolerated them. That was enough. Some documents from the archives of the secret police, of the communist political police, a police force whose main objective was to attack the church, to denigrate and slander the leaders of that church. Well, some archives that there is no way to prove that they are true. They are simply from a police force that was dedicated to slander the church. They are presented as evidence to attack St. John Paul II, presented to the population in a television program. In Poland, they reacted immediately. The Polish Bishops' Conference issued a statement in which said, among other things, "We cannot allow a situation in which those who oppose the communist dictatorship would have to be ashamed and give explanations, instead of doing it to those who monitored citizens, wrote denunciation, collaborated with the communist regime, prosecuted believers, and violated people's conscience." The Polish laity also responded immediately. They took to the streets in a massive way. They are not going to allow someone who everyone knew had been a mortal enemy of communism, thanks to whom the Berlin Wall fell, and now in police files that were dedicated to slandering the ecclesiastical authorities, to be smeared without any other type of proof. But from Poland, the issue has jumped to Italy. 40 years ago, a teenager disappeared, related to the daughter of a person who worked in the Vatican. Something regrettable, terrible, that the family has been claiming, with every right, to know what has happened to that girl, to that teenager. Well, now one of her brothers is appearing on Italian television, always Italian television, on a primetime program, where he says that he has an audio of a person, an audio from years ago, a person who is related to a mafia gang in which the person affirms that St. John Paul II had sexual relations with minors, that this missing teenager was taken to his room to have sex with her, that when the situation became dangerous for the Pope's honor, the Secretary of State, Cardinal Casseroli, ordered the girl to be killed, and that is well known, he claims, that St. John Paul II went out that night, not to bless houses, insinuating that at night he went to brothels where he had sex with minors. It is not that the slander is disgusting, abominable, but that is absurd. It is absurd. St. John Paul II was the Pope, an extraordinarily well-known personage. Can anyone with a single neuron still functioning believe that for years he went to brothels and that nobody ever found out, and that there was never a photo, that there was never a denunciation, that there was never a rumor? Well, now a television station comes out saying that there is someone who says that this all is evidence, that the mafioso claims that all this evidence prime time to slander St. John Paul II. Unfortunately, the Vatican has not reacted neither to defend the honor of the Pope nor of that of Cardinal Casseroli, who is accused of murder. It has not reacted. It has only said that it will be investigated. And I feel bad because there are already some who are claiming that this somehow involves the current pontiff, Pope Francis. I am completely sure that this is impossible, but some are already saying that this was a way to attack the person of St. John Paul II, to destroy his legacy, both pastoral, spiritual, as well as dogmatic. Who cares about the truth? What matters is to stain the name of that person, St. John Paul II, so that the work he left behind, I'm thinking of Veritatis Splendor, the splendor of truth, or I'm thinking of the Catechism, the fundamental stone with which all those who want to promote German synod and the synods of some countries very much tuned with the Germans are crashing again and again. It is necessary to attack the person, and it is necessary to attack him so that this work disappears. The one who fortunately did react immediately was his secretary, Cardinal Desoues, the former secretary of St. John Paul II. He has published a statement in which he says the following: "It goes without saying that these insinuations, which at first one might think come from the slippery circles of the Roman underworld, now given an appearance of pseudo-presentability, are in reality insulting accusations, false from the beginning to end, unreal, laughable to the point of comedy, if they were not tragic, even criminal themselves. Indeed, a gigantic crime is what has been done to Emanuela and her family, the missing teenager. But criminal is to take advantage of it with uncontrollable insults aimed at the preeminently discrediting people and environments until there is an evidence to the contrary. Slander that something remains. They know it, and they do it. They not only have hatred for St. John Paul II and the Catholic Church, it is that what they really hate is the Church being last fortress, the last bulwark against relativism. That is what they hate, and of them, of the leaders of the Church, St. John Paul II and Benedict XVI are two of main men. They have also done the same with Benedict XVI. They accuse him of a similar things. Not that he went to brothels at night with minors, but they accuse him of having tolerated that priests committed acts of pederasty without having done anything against them. And they not only accuse him during his lifetime, but they have continued accusing him even after his death, until finally a judge in Munich has said that it had no sense, and that the accusation was definitely settled. But I repeat, it is not about seeking the truth, it is about slandering extraordinary people to discredit their work. However, even to know how to slander, it is necessary to have a little of intelligence, because to say that Pope goes to Bethel at nights for years and nobody finds out, they have to embed slander is a little bit more credible, because this is not only offensive, unbearable, insulting, outrageous, but is really unbelievable. We entrust ourselves to St. John Paul II, saint of which we have not the slightest doubt. Saint, we entrust ourselves to him so that he may intercede before the Lord, and may the Lord our God put an end to as soon as possible to the situation of truly unbearable confusion that we are living in the Church. Until next week, God willing. We will continue to keep you informed of what is happening in the Church. In the meantime, you can still check out our website in www.magnificat.tv. See you next week, God willing.